Well, I've got some unfinished business in this here location. Armed with my Canon 1in film camera, I'm here to complete said business. It doesn't particularly require that much backstory. I shot a portrait session here recently. It went fine overall, generally speaking, except for the part of it that we shot here in this abandoned house. That didn't go so great. Didn't care for those images all that much. And why? Why is that? Unintentionally, this sort of became a good opportunity to talk about the Canon 1in film camera, kind of do a long-term review. I mean, I'm not talking decades here. I've been using this camera something like 2.5 years. It's actually the least fun film camera I own, and yet it's the one I shoot with the most. And I think that should tell you something. When I'm in the mood to shoot film and trespass onto private property, I'm grabbing a camera that's fast and convenient and delivers results. And that's this camera. Sturdy, too. Took a fall one time, like a champ. Oh, and here I step on a nail. So there you go, property owners. You got your revenge. Well done. So what do you need to know, really, when you're reviewing a film camera released in 1994? What are the burning questions you have? The EOS 1 in this camera replaced the EOS 1 from 5 years earlier, and was itself later replaced by the 1V 6 years later. But what difference does that make? You either want the latest model or you want an old film camera, right? I mean, I guess you could in theory want both, but at least currently you can't have both in one package. Those would be two separate wants. I can tell you that I literally gave it no thought in my case. I've had a lot of experience with the original 1D digital camera and the 1DS from way back in the day, and those cameras inherit from this camera, and so anything in that family of cameras I was perfectly happy with. I picked the best deal I found at the time, which happened to be this kind of middle child camera, the 1in, and I was completely thrilled with it and continue to be. Great camera. Oh, and the 1D Mark II, I forgot to mention that. I actually never owned a Mark II, but I used them extensively at 2 different studios I worked for. But anyway, I'm sure the 1in has slightly improved features over the 1, and I'm sure the 1V has slightly, incrementally better autofocus than the 1in, I guess. But again, refer to what I said a minute ago about you either want the latest model or you want an old film camera. This is a great film camera. Build quality, excellent. I mean, it's a film camera. What else could they possibly have improved between the different versions besides autofocus? It's not like it could have a higher resolution or dynamic range or something. That has nothing to do with the camera. That's all determined by the film you shoot through it. Oh, but the color science of the Canon 1in is to die for. No, there's no color science. It does shoot video, though, unlike its predecessor. No, it doesn't shoot video. It's a film camera. I mean, technically it does shoot video if, you just press the shutter button 36 consecutive times, you'll get 1.5 seconds of video. Be a very expensive and shitty way to capture video, but you could do that, I suppose. And I feel like I need to apologize for uttering the phrase color science. It just feels like a very douchey thing to say. So here I am walking away from this abandoned house, yet again, as a failure.
Shit.
I actually do like what I got there, but it's not remotely what I intended to get there yet again. And the reason for that was, at least so I thought, it was very overcast, kind of gloomy. I was planning to do macro shots, just pick up details, but with my 400 speed drugstore cheap film and my 2.8 macro lens, there just was not nearly enough light to shoot what I wanted. So I ended up just shooting the whole thing basically on my 50mm lens because it was the only lens I had fast enough to shoot anything in those conditions. So I'm just out here closer to where I live now, same gloomy day, or maybe it was the next gloomy day. We've had a lot of gloomy days. They sort of all just kind of merged together in my brain. And now I am using that macro lens. Well, it's a 100mm lens, not even an L lens. If you're a Canon user, not the high-end lens. I have some L lenses in the EF mount, but this is not one of them. Which brings me to the real reason I bought this camera. So I have a bunch of film cameras. Some are just inherited from family that I don't use. But the ones I actively use, I have a Mamiya medium format RB67, which it's its own camera system with its own lenses. And then I have an Olympus OMG that I inherited from my mom. But I do use that camera because I get results on it that I can't get with other cameras. So it sort of earns its keep. Plus, it's really fun to use. It is a cute, compact, fun camera with all sorts of neat clicky noises, very analog things to turn and click and whatnot. It's a fun camera. But it is its own system with its own lenses. But I used to shoot Canon DSLRs before I moved to mirrorless on the digital side. So I have a bunch of EF mount lenses that I've just owned for a long time. And I wanted a film camera that could utilize those. Plus, the EF used market is already pretty great and will only get better considering Canon has moved to a new mount. And as people want to get rid of their EF lenses to get RF lenses, I think there will be some good deals out there. Especially considering there are tons. It's a very popular mount. When I originally had this thought, actually, the camera I purchased was not the 1N. It was the A2. Significantly cheaper camera that hit all of those goals. All one of those goals, to use the F lenses. It was also a great camera. It did have noticeably worse autofocus, though, than the 1N. Also, the build quality was quite poor. And to whatever extent there's a menu system, there are things to be adjusted. I found that to be a bit clunky, the buttons on the A2. It's a good camera, struggles with autofocus, and the button system is a bit clunky. So it was a huge upgrade going to the 1N. Maybe huge is a bit of an exaggeration. It was a noticeable upgrade. The 1N is a way better camera than the A2. You know, it's a professional camera versus a consumer camera. That's at least how I look at it. So on the way home, I shot some long exposures. This is a thing that you have to do when you're a film photographer and you want to develop your film when you get home. Got to use up the whole roll. This one I actually liked better leaving it as a negative image, although sometimes I'm hesitant to do that because I think it's maybe gimmicky or something, but I think it's cool. So I'm already plotting my next trip over to that abandoned house. I want to give it one more try. Hopefully I'll have sunlight on my next trip. But I also have a lot of anxiety about it because I'm not that brave. I already stepped on a nail, but mostly I'm just kind of freaked out about trespassing and getting shot or something. There were a handful of images already on this roll of film that I discovered when I developed it. This one represents the only bit of complex focusing I did between the two rolls that I shot in the course of this video, and it nailed it. I mean, the autofocus is quite good on this camera. And again, this is not an L lens, not one of their high-end lenses. This is a mid-range lens. It's that same 100mm macro lens. Fun fact, between the two rolls I shot through the course of this video, I did not have one single image out of focus. I did have some motion blur, but that was intentional. But not one shot out of focus. I don't even get results like that on my digital cameras. And one of the coolest things about shooting film, especially over time, is that you forget what you shot. I was really excited that I had a couple of shots of my dad in the rehab hospital on this roll. He did about 2 months in 2 different hospitals, regular hospitals, then a month and a half or so in a rehab hospital. He's actually home now, but he's had a crap year, an absolute crap year. I guess the whole family has had a crap year. But he went from not even being able to stand, had a bunch of therapy, physical and otherwise, to using a wheelchair, to getting around on a walker. He's actually using a cane now, and sometimes doesn't even use the cane. He completed surgery. This was his last day of radiation therapy for his brain cancer. So he had most of it cut out, or some of it cut out. Had the rest irradiated. Things are kind of returning to normal, somewhat, at least a new normal. Here's my wife running in some typical New Mexico weather, and me not running. That's pretty typical as well. Yeah, we go back here. Oh, my old enemy, my arch rival, my nemesis. What can we do? How can we work this out? Really? Tell me. Although it's a sunny day, still too dark for my macro lens. Still too dark. I didn't see that coming. It's too dark for my macro lens. That's fucked up. So, obviously a new plan was needed, yet again, which ended up just kind of being the same plan, which is to switch to my 50 because that lens is fast enough to handle it. But, no more wide shots, no more shots through the window. I was gonna find details. Stop shooting through that window. That's literally the same shot I got last time. I guess it's a little more interesting because there's sun. But gotta get more creative than that. Come on. There's a setting I love on this camera where when it auto rewinds the film after you take your last shot, it will leave the tab sticking out. I developed my own film, so I find this very useful because the way I used to load 35mm film from the canister onto the reel to develop it would involve popping open the canister and doing the whole process in the dark. And now I just sort of pull out about as much film as you would when you're loading it in the camera in the first place, trimming the little tongue bit off, so starting to load it onto the reel in the light, get it started, turn off the light, and then, suck up all the film into the reel, and then just cut it with a pair of scissors at the end of the roll. Never even popping open the canister. I find this to be a much easier way of doing it, because especially with 36 exposure rolls, that's so much film, that's so much length, so much chance for something to go wrong, and you'd have to kind of pop open the reel and start over again in the dark. And each time you do that, you're kind of damaging it more. Anyway, so this camera, my A2 does it as well, but I really appreciate that with 90s era film cameras, because my Olympus 35mm does not do that. You manually rewind it and you can try to kind of guess, but I never guess right. Although I'm taking the same shot here again as my last visit, I'm doing it knowingly this time. I liked the shot minus the composition the first time where it ended at the top of the frame, but that's because I was shoved up against the wall and that was as wide as I could shoot, and I needed it just a touch wider. So I had the same lens this time. I tried it vertically, but that didn't really improve it at all. Just sort of looks like a haphazard composition. I just needed a wider lens. But overall, I must report that my feelings are pretty positive for the second visit. I'm not doing anything earth-shaking and nothing superhuman, but I am following through with my plan, and for some reason that is just my greatest challenge. I'm always abandoning my plan. This is the only image I retouched anything on, and it's something stupid. I'm not even going to point it out. It was just something that bugged me. Generally speaking, I'm kind of philosophically opposed when shooting film to doing any kind of retouching. More and more, I just actually feel that way across the board, not just limited to film. I really hate retouching stuff. Why can't things just look real, look the way they look? So I highly recommend the Canon EOS 1N film camera by Canon, from Canon Incorporated. Canon Inc., the Canon company. Better shots out the window today because of that sunlight. I wondered if that other structure was abandoned also, but I see animals out there now, so I'm thinking it's not abandoned. Something I learned this year, it's really important to do stuff you like, even when everything is falling apart around you. I'm tempted to say especially when things are falling apart around you, but now it's starting to sound like some dumb, cheesy internet quote. So I'm definitely not going to say that part. But I'm lucky in the sense that, well, photography is one of my 2 favorite things to do in this world. Lucky in the sense that I know that, because I'm aware of that fact. I suppose not everyone is so lucky to find something they love that much. God damn, and at the risk of just going full-on cliché man, recent events have made it clear to me that living a long time shouldn't be the goal. Living well should be the goal. Well, by whose standards? Well, I would say by your own standards. You may have a different answer. Do what you love. Do it all the time. Don't waste a fucking second doing anything else. Don't get caught up in, oh, you need to earn more money. I mean, unless you actually do need to earn more money. But if it's just because that's what everyone tells you, fuck them. I mean, you don't actually have to fuck them. You could just tell them that you don't agree. Might be simpler. Okay, I'm gonna say it. I wish I could have another crack at shooting portraits here. I think I could do it right this time. I think I know what I would do differently. Which I didn't even talk about what I did the first time, so talking about what I would do differently is just contextually going to be unhelpful. Oh, I like that shot. I like that shot very much. That was worth the trip. I imagine myself maybe one day as a much better photographer where I just walk up to a scene, I take the shot, and then I leave. Maybe in this scenario I'd carry a microphone with me so I could just sort of drop it on the ground as I go. If you're familiar with the expression beating a dead horse, this is my beating a dead horse shot. It's an affliction I suffer from where, like, I go, hey, that worked. Let me try the same thing again, only this time shittier. Well, now I'm heading home, and I want/need to develop my film when I get there. So guess what I do? Take a wild stab in the dark. That's right, I just take a bunch of shots on the road. There, I was literally driving when I shot that, so you know right away that's probably going to be a masterpiece. Hey, look, it's a mountain or something. I mean, at least there's some interesting light happening there, but it is kind of a lame shot. Hey, there's me driving again. Those are always winners. I actually have managed to get 1 or 2 shots while driving that I actually liked. So what do we have left? 1 more frame on the roll? How about a long exposure? And there it is. Well, that just about wraps it up. Canon 1 in. It's good. Buy it.